I don't think it's not working.
Yeah. Guys, let's start, because you know, it's just gonna, I know what's gonna happen here, yeah? Things are gonna come out of control. And this guy's gonna have to start raising his voice, okay? Go ahead. Do you want us, should we start taking questions?
All right, guys, let's start taking questions.
Are they gonna write them down, or are they gonna say them out, or both?
I think they're just going to say them out.
Okay, it's up to you guys. If you want to write something down or something, then you can do that. I don't mind. Yeah, it's up to you. Some people don't like...
If someone doesn't want to ask, it's okay. All right, guys, does anyone have the first question?
Well, his one's all right, isn't it? Okay, all right. Sorry, go ahead.
What's the question?
Why does religion have to be rational if people aren't rational and I think this concept is rational?
Sorry, that last part?
If faith isn't rational and people are rational.
Well, I mean, here's a few things that you've said. You've used semantics to kind of make your point there, which is what we have to do, right? But let me say the question out loud for everyone again. She goes, why does religion have to be rational if people are not rational and faith isn't rational, yeah? Okay, so there's a few presuppositions which need to be kind of addressed. First one is that why does religion have to be rational, yeah? So the question would be, what is religion in your mind? Yeah, because Islam, we would say, is more than religion. It's a way of life. I know it sounds very kind of, you've heard this before, right? But we would say it's a way of life, yeah? Which has a spiritual dimension. Why does it have to be rational if people are not rational? That's a conditional. So I would argue that people are rational, yeah? And that's what distinguishes them from other animals. But once again, it depends upon what you mean by rationality, right? So I would say that if people were not rational, they wouldn't be able to do certain things. Formal logic, they wouldn't be able to do mathematics, they wouldn't be able to do lots of things, which they do. And I'm sure this university is a testimony to that, and that's why you've come to university. Not because you don't want to be rational, but because you want to exercise your rationality, right? So I don't subscribe to that second portion of what you've said, that if people are not rational, I would say that actually people are rational. There is evidence to suggest that people are able or capable of dealing with things which require, what in the vernacular sense is referred to as rationality, which is things like, once again, formal logic and mathematics, etc. And if faith isn't rational. Once again, faith, what does faith mean? In the Islamic sense, iman comes from the Arabic root word amn, which literally means security and a sense of being secure. Yeah? Iman is what is referred to or translated into faith. However, faith usually in the dictionary, if you look at an Oxford dictionary, will say believing in something without evidence or something like that, which goes contrary to what we've just discussed. So from that perspective, using the word faith in that vernacular sense wouldn't suit the Islamic thesis. Might be clever for a Christian to say that or use it, or actually very handy for them because it will explain why Christianity or Trinitarianism is irrational. We say, well, we don't need rationality. That makes sense from that angle. But for a Muslim, we would say that actually we do have evidence, we are rational, and our religion is rationalizable. So that's how we would put it.
All right, any other questions? Yeah.
So as a Muslim, my belief in God mainly comes from through a process of elimination, whereby it makes more sense than anything else. But there's still a fundamental idea in Islam that I can't get to grips with, which is the concept, the idea of hell, and how you can justify hell, and how that can be consistent with the idea that God's all merciful and all powerful. But I've asked this question a lot. I've never had a satisfactory answer.
Well, I guess, I mean, what people think is that, let me agree to your presupposition for the sake of argument, yeah? Let us agree that hell cannot exist if God is merciful. Let's agree with that fundamental presupposition. Then the question would be, is that all God is, though? Is God essentially and fundamentally only, exclusively merciful? And then I would ask the question, how would you determine what mercy is? What is mercy? What is compassion? So your only explanation of mercy would be confined to your experiential or knowledge reasoning, your life, basically. What you've deemed as mercy. And that could be through primary, secondary socialization. It could be through being told that X is merciful or compassionate and Y isn't. So once again, even if we just agree, for the sake of argument, right, that mercy is, according to you, incompatible with the hellfire, I would say, what is mercy? And how could you come away from describing mercy without giving me a socially constructed idea of what mercy constitutes in the world that you live in. However, I would add to that God is not just merciful, He's just. And from an Islamic perspective, all of those moral dilemmas that are posed to us would be easily refutable with one sentence. We would say on atheism, naturalism, or materialism, there is no such thing as an objective morality. There isn't. You cannot construct an objective morality. So whatever your preconceived socialized idea of what mercy constitutes, or why this is not compatible with mercy, are exactly that. They are socialized, they are socially constructed, and then socialized. People are socialized with those ideas. So you cannot make an intellectual, rational case with it. You can make an emotional argument, and you can make a very powerful social argument. But you cannot make an intellectual or rationalizable argument. You can't use logic with that. You can only say that this is, according to us and our standards, according to how I've been socialized, not merciful. Because why? How could we allow human beings to be burned and this thing? So fine. Another thing you need to understand is, from an Islamic perspective, how we conceptualize shirk. And I've done this before with someone in Speaker's Corner, and I think it was quite effective. So let me just reiterate it. I think a lot of people don't understand how hell works because, or why it exists even, because they don't understand the severity of what we consider as Muslims the most severe crime, which is shirk. They don't understand that. Because for them, if I ask people in the streets, what is the worst thing anyone can do? Say, raping a baby, this, that, all these things. And we're saying, okay, fine. I agree with your sentiment and I appreciate where you're coming from. You do make an emotional argument, but it's also, to a large extent, according to me and my religion, very true, yeah? But I would say at the same time, how do you add value to something? In other words, how is it that the baby in your mind has now intrinsic value? How does that have intrinsic value? Why does that have intrinsic value? On materialism, it doesn't have intrinsic value. You cannot add objective intrinsic value. You can say subjectively that this is my idea of value. Why is it that killing or raping a baby is any worse or any better than killing or raping a rat, or maybe you can't rape a rat, but you know, a cow or something like that? Yeah? Why is it worse? What makes it worse, right? On naturalism or materialism, on atheism. Objectively, you can't say it's worse. Subjectively, you can make an argument, a social argument, an emotional argument, I understand. But objectively, you can't, yeah? So I would say to you that our conceptualization of the value problem, as it's called in philosophy, is this. We would say that value exists with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That because He is the most valuable in terms of He has unlimited value, right? In other words, you cannot quantify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of, you can't say He is this much, yeah, of anything. Because we would say that He is infinite in His power, His wisdom, His mercy, etc. Therefore, doing that which is in non-compliance with Him constitutes the most severe sin. If you do something which is non-compliant, in other words, giving rights, and this is the fundamental idea of shirk, giving rights, the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to His creator, this cause, to any other deity, any other entity, constitutes the most egregious sin of human beings. And then, below that, is what He told us has got the most hurma, or sanctity. So then it would be human beings, and then animals, and then it would follow in that perspective, from that way. So we were able to derive an objective morality through religion, from that perspective. And that's why we would say that hell is very, very, very scary, and very dangerous, and very dangerous. It's very bad. Yeah, it looks, I mean, the descriptions of it, it's not a merciful place, yeah? But we would say that it's an appropriate place for some people to exist in, considering those circumstances that I've just described, yeah? And for you to understand this, you really do have to take yourself out of the social circle of basically this materialistic worldview, yeah? I don't know if that answers your question, but if not, then we can speak after, okay?
Feel free to ask.
If you want to add,
follow-up
do you want a
questions.
probing question?
As in, so what you're saying is rationally you can't infer Islam. Like you
Can you
can't,
say that?
like, because you almost say that rationality doesn't really, it's subjective.
No, let me say that. An inference is conclusion based on evidence. I didn't talk about inference in my discussion.
But what I struggle with is is the concept of creation.
Yeah.
And like how you can create someone and still put them into eternal damnation.
I think your question now has become a little bit different. So you're saying, so now predeterminism has come into it. So how could you predetermine hell for someone that you know will go? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. You know, I've got a new way of answering this question. So let me try it out here in LSE, right? With the people. I've tried this with DAWAH. I've tried this with a few people. Question is, how could it be the case, right? If God knows where we're going to be, and He even created our destiny, how could it be that He sends us to hell on that, based on that, yeah? So I thought about this, and I'm not into analogies, and any analogy is going to be basically deficient. But let me try my best anyways. There is an Arabic poetry that I listened to one time describing the answer to this question, which I found really powerful. It says, وَمِنْ عَجَائِبِ الجَّبَّارِ أَنْ يَجْبُرُ الْعِبَادِ بِالِاخْتِيَارِ. And it's from the wonders of the compeller that He is able to compel the creation into being, into having choice. Okay? Because this question of, okay, is it determinism or free will? So, okay, how do you explain this in an analogy that could potentially make sense? One time, I was in school, and I saw some robots. You know, they're dealing with robots. They had this kind of thing that they're dealing with robots. And I was thinking, right? Thinking maybe I can use this to explain, because it makes sense, yeah? And if it doesn't make sense, guys, you can tell me. I don't mind, yeah? Let me tell you. So what it is just imagine that we have a robot. You know, artificial intelligence is catching up to us, yeah? Imagine we have, and I've tried this with a couple of mashayikh, a couple of shuyukh, and they liked it, by the way. So I wouldn't say this if it was going to be an aqeedah problem or something, what I'm about to say. Anyways, imagine you have a robot, yeah? You have a robot. Because I saw the kids putting in like algorithms into the robot. So if you tell the robot to do certain things, it works in the sequence. So the language you put into the robot dictates what the robot will do. Bear in mind that human beings are a product of two things, genetics and environment. We're not completely free to do anything we want to do because we're constricted with the possibilities, yeah? Now, if we bear that in mind, that human beings are constricted with genetics and environment, if we say, for example, with this robot, yeah? If I put into this robot an algorithm which would allow it to make a choice, any choice, considering, yeah, let's say, for example, the possibilities around it. So in other words, I allowed the robot to be able to basically assess what possibilities are there and then make a free choice according to that. Now, if I've done that, I've created the robot, yeah, let's say I created the robot, and then I programmed the robot, and in fact, I've programmed it to make choices. So I forced the robot to make choice. I forced it to make choices. But that choice that the robot can make is any choice it wants to make. Let's say, for example, I'm a very good programmer, and I know what choices it will kind of make, yeah? Based on environment and genetics. Now, based on that, if I make such a robot, and the robot goes into society, and it walks in Speaker's Corner, and it sees this guy called Sarah Garvey, who's one guy that I've had an issue with. And the robot decides, because most people do, if you know they had free choice, complete free choice, to slap this guy. Yeah? So, will I be punished? I'm the programmer of the robot, but I haven't told the robot to go and slap this guy. Or Tommy Robinson or something, yeah? If I told the robot to, you know, do whatever you want, and then it just saw Tommy Robinson in the streets in Luton, and it decided to slap him. Okay, now the police come to me and say, listen, whose robot is this? It says, my robot. Or the court, I have a court hearing, and they say, what's the judge going to decide? Let's say, no, I'm not going to say this, okay? Because it could be taken out of context, all right? There's too many cameras on. Let's say it did something really bad to Tommy Robinson, yeah, the robot. Will I go to prison? I won't, because I haven't created a robot. I haven't programmed it to do that. I haven't. So who is responsible? The robot is responsible for that, directly responsible. You could make a case that actually I'm indirectly, you know, responsible. Fine, make that case. But directly, the robot is the one that's calling the shots. Yeah, he's the one, or that robot, that thing is doing it. So this is for me a way to reconcile predeterminism and free will. I think that we are predetermined in that sense, in the sense that we have been conditioned to make choices. And we have been forced to make choices. And our choices are basically our choices. They are our choices. Like the robot's choice in that analogy would be its choices. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the reality actually has created everything and He's indirect. He's created everything indirectly. Yeah? So the same thing applies with the robot. Makes sense?
So you still agree that...
Wait, hold on. Ali Dawa wants to ask a question.
No, I think this might help you with it.
Yeah, go on, Ali, go on.
I'll ask you a question. Does Allah want us to go hellfire by default?
No, so that's a good question. So Allah, yeah.
Because it will answer, because does Allah want us to go to hellfire by default?
Yeah.
If not, what things has He told us to avoid?
Yeah. There is irada kawniyya, irada shar'iyya and stuff. What does Allah want? So irada kawniyya is what Allah has allowed to happen, and which goes back to my question. Irada shar'iyya goes back to, okay, well, we've given human being agency. Okay, let him do whatever he wants to do, and whatever he does, he'll be responsible for it. But He doesn't. Allah doesn't want, in a shari way, or in a kawni way, yeah, for us to go to hell. Obviously, He says that in the Quran. Did you want to say anything?
So you still agree that God's created a condition which He knows people go to hell?
Yeah, in that sense, He knows. But knowledge, okay, you have to understand here, if I know something, it doesn't mean I am responsible for it. It doesn't. It really doesn't. If I know something, it doesn't contradict responsibility. If I know something, it doesn't contradict it. I want to know how, on a logical basis, on a purely logical basis, how pre-knowledge of something, yeah, entails responsibility.
You created it in the first place.
Yeah, but that doesn't... Tell me on a logical level how pre-knowledge of something entails responsibility. Okay, if I'm doing it directly, there's a case. But when we talk about that whole scenario I've talked to you about, which is that the robot is doing things directly, and that God is doing things indirectly, in the way that we've talked about in the robot analogy, then it's different. But I've never understood the objection to this. I really haven't. I've never got it. I don't understand why people think this is a problem. I can see on the face of it, it does seem problematic, but I've never got it. I've never understood really why is it such a difficult thing for people to understand. But, yeah, anything else?
Can you mention that verse? Allah said about, He was going to mention a minute ago.
Which one?
Allah says, why would I punish you?
I can't remember. Who remembers it? Where's the Qari?
Quran, Allah SWT says in the Quran, what will I get out of punishing?
Yeah, who remembers the verse? I can't remember it.
No, that's what Allah SWT says. So basically...
Or are you trying to grow me up in here?
No.
You're meant to be on my team.
It's a good analogy, what you said. But maybe just for the brother. If you want, we can do this after. Because I don't want to...
Yeah.
If that has the answer, do that after.
Ali, that will deal with you, inshallah, after. We'll come and eat and have something or something. I like you, brother. I like it, mashallah. We'll talk about it after. Yeah? Anything else? Anything else, guys? Yes? Yeah.
So if you have an adult and you see a child drowning, for example, and the adult knows that if he doesn't help, the child will drown, is that adult not responsible for the child drowning, even though he can help the child?
Say again?
Okay, so you have a child drowning, right?
Yeah.
You have an adult passing by. And he knows that if he doesn't help that child, the
Yeah,
child
okay.
will
So how would you define responsibility?
Well, depending on the relationship, right?
Yeah, okay. So in your example there, that's fine. I want to ask what your definition of responsibility is.
Responsibility?
Yeah.
Okay. The awareness that unless you take steps, I actually don't know how to take responsibility.
Well, that's why semantics sometimes plays a big part in posing a question like that. Yeah?
How would you define it?
Well, look, the dictionary definition of responsibility, I don't know. Yeah, that's why if someone brings it out, yeah, I don't know. Okay, if we, in a vernacular sense, I don't know. Because if you say that, okay, responsibility, because on a philosophical level, there is a discussion of that if you don't do something, to what extent are you responsible for it? So, because if you use your principle and extend it to the most rationalizable possibility, I'll say to you, if you don't give charity now, yeah, someone in Africa is going to die. Are you responsible for his death?
Well, that's a different connection.
No, it's the same thing.
No.
But it's just expanded. No. Because what you've done there, you said, okay, so say you've got someone, adult is there, kid is drowning, yeah? I can see the kid. All right. The only difference between my analogy and your analogy is distance. That's the only difference. That is the only difference. If I say to you, okay, if I'm someone in Ghana now, And you get these charity contributors and they say, okay, well, you know what? We need to raise money for this child. And if we don't raise this money, this kid is going to die. Okay, and actually you're on there and you're seeing that. Okay, so that actually is the same thing in a sense. I understand that the connection is more direct, but really and truly, the only one thing I can see is different is actual proximity. But if we did that with everything, we would say we're responsible for a lot of people's death. Yeah? Seriously. If we expanded that idea of responsibility to the highest common multiple, yeah? You guys in LSE, you can tell, is it highest common, it's lowest common multiple and what? Highest common factor. Then we could do that, So the question is where, because it's not yes, it's not black and white. But what I'm trying to say to you is, there is a spectrum of responsibility, yeah? And we have to acknowledge the breadth of that spectrum before we can answer that question. And it includes things like ability as well. It's a good question though, it's definitely puzzling, yeah? And obviously it's a philosophical question which people have grappled with. Yeah.
So, like, according to Christianity,
Yeah.
like, Christians believe that Jesus is God.
Hmm.
That, like, Jesus went around telling people, like, I am God. So, like, how come Jesus is still able to, like, feature in Islam?
Sorry, one second.
Could you get out from me, please?
What do you want to do?
The mic, please.
Oh,
So then we can get people using.
you want the whole thing out? Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, sister. Can you repeat the question? I apologize. Yeah.
So, like, in Christianity, like, Christians believe that Jesus is God, and then he goes around telling people, like, I am God. How is Jesus still able to feature in Islam that despite those claims?
Where did he say I'm God?
Pardon?
Where did he say that?
He goes around telling people, like, I am God.
Where does he say that?
Like, the Trinity.
I've been looking for a long time for that. What? I don't think he says that. You've got comments like, I am, yeah? Which there's a whole discussion on that and, the statements in John. But anyways, we don't accept the Bible as an ultimate authority. I think there is scholarship now which indicates that the Bible has been corrupted, in Bruce Metzger's words. Yeah, so the first presupposition can be dismantled by us saying that we don't actually agree that the corpus of the biblical text, especially the New Testament, is in fact intact in the purest sense. And number two, we would say, actually, frankly, even if it was intact in the purest sense, or even if it wasn't, whatever, we don't even see anything too unambiguous in the New Testament corpus, where Jesus Christ is repeatedly telling people, I'm God. So we see the opposite. John chapter 5, verse 30, I do not submit to my own will, I submit to the will of the Father. So he's a Muslim from that perspective, because someone who submits to the wills of the Father is a Muslim. Sounds a bit like Zakir Naik, isn't it? Sorry, go ahead.
What about like all the other stuff? So like, like the virgin birth and like, the angels coming down to announce like.
That's very beautiful, because the Quran has a direct answer to that, so I don't have to bother myself too much with this intellectually. I mean, obviously, I'm not bothered talking to you. I'm saying in chapter 3, verse 59, it says, إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. Certainly, the similitude of Jesus is like that of Adam. He created him from dust and he said, be, and he was. So the Quranic argument is that if you're saying that Jesus is God or the Son of God because he was born of a virgin and he didn't have a father, then that would entitle Adam to a similar position, because actually he didn't have a mother or a father. Yeah. But obviously in Matthew it says, "Blessed be the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." So it depends on, once again, it's a semantical issue, because what do we mean by son of God anyways? The Creed of Nicaea tells us very explicitly it's begotten, not made. And he's from the substance of God. But what does that actually entail? I mean, what are we talking about here? Do you see what I mean? So once again, this goes into a logical problem. Because if we say he is a God, then is God, the Father is God, the Holy Spirit is God, but there's one God, it's difficult. You have to dump rationality. And if you're happy to do that for your religion, then I would say you should do that with everything, because religion is the most important thing. Yeah? So if you want to dump rationality for religion, dump it for school as well, for university. So next time you sit an exam, just leave rationality at the side. Just write whatever you want, okay? Anyways,
I've got a few questions. Guys, if you want to write any questions down and pass it to the front, feel free. So my question is that you referred to various arguments for the existence of God.
Yes.
And if accepted, one can say they prove God exists, but they don't necessarily prove that it's an Islamic God. The fact that they're first thought of by Christian scholars shows that they are not unique to Islam. So what proof is there that the Islamic God in particular exists, rather than any other idea of God, not just Christian or Jewish, but any other type?
first of all, it's once again semantics, because like the word God, it comes from the German word Gott. Yeah? Allah in Arabic, there's a discussion among the scholars. Where does actually Allah come from? Yeah? And I had a long discussion with one of my teachers about this. There's two opinions. I follow one opinion. Let me just tell you what I follow. Let's go with it for today, yeah? Because it's going to be a long... There's two opinions. One opinion is that Allah is just a word, yeah? Just like Eli, and it's a word that doesn't come... It's غَيْرُ مُشْتَقٍ, which means it doesn't have a derivative. And another opinion is Sibawayh's opinion. Sibawayh is probably one of the heaviest, strongest Arab grammarians, he's not an Arab. But by the way, most Arab grammarians are not Arabs. Anyways, he said that it comes from Al-Ilah. Al-Ilah means the God. So that's the second opinion. So when we talk about the Islamic God, what are we talking about? We're talking about the God, in a sense, in the definite. Al is min adawat al-ta'rif. It's actually one of the ways you can make something definite in the Arabic language. So it's the God. We don't have an Islamic God. That doesn't exist. There's only one God we believe in, which is the God. In other words, the creator, the sustainer, the one who we would refer to as the cause or whatever you want to call. Yeah, but the God. Yeah, in other words, and this is another thing, an ilah is that which is worthy of worship. Is that which is worshipped. So the Quran says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who takes his nafs as a hawa, his own desires, as a God? So you can have, and the hadith of the Prophet, تعس عبد الدرهم والدرهم دينار والدرهم دينار والدرهم, yeah? So, woe to or curse be to the abd, the slave of the dinar and the dirham. Dinar means is the currency, because people worship money in that sense. So from that perspective, what is the question amounting to? It really amounts to a semantical question. So what God do you believe in? We've already described the God that we believe in. We believe in the God that initiated everything, that caused everything. There is no such thing as an Islamic God. There is the God, which is worthy of worship, which we define as the one who's the maintainer, the sustainer, etc. of the universe. And all of those other things that are worshipped are gods which are not worthy of worship. For example, Jesus, right? He's a human being who is not worthy of worship. Yeah? I mean, really, do you know what I find funny nowadays, yeah? I find funny these people that, like, we encounter them in Speaker's Corner, don't we? I mean, these people now that, like, they have a thing with Arabs. They don't like Arab people. I don't know why.